Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Carrie, once again. A nice overlay of what it is we're trying to do. And I think, as I said a little bit earlier, I think this whole idea of professional attributes, I guess it's for us, it's the actual soft skills of being a learning and development professional. It's what do we bring to that party? How do we embrace diversity? How do we continuously develop ourselves? How do we connect with people in different ways? And I think this afternoon we got 3 outstanding mentors to guide us through that whole process, and I'm really looking forward to the session. The first one that we're going to look at is value diversity. I've roped Lyndall Box into it. She's a local Geelong colleague of mine, and I brought her in, and she said diversity, and we said, what's it all about? And I said, well, diversity, it's everything. I mean, diversity covers almost so many different things. It's unbelievable. So she took it on board, and Aaron King is going to help out with her and things like that. So good to see you, Aaron. And Lyndall, I want to just turn it over to you. And I think what you want to do is get people to view your presentation in speaker mode. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And you'll see why when you have a look at my screen now. So if you're in speaker view, you're going to be able to see the text on the screen.
So everybody move themselves into speaker view, and then you'll see Lyndall there with her presentation rather than in gallery view.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the welcome, and here we are with value diversity. And as Bill just mentioned, this is the topic of one of the capabilities, but I chose to call this session Working Towards True Inclusion, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. Before I do that, I want to just acknowledge or extend the acknowledgement that Bill made earlier of country, but to the traditional owners of the land that I'm presenting from today as well, which are the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. So who am I? I'm Lyndall Box. I'm a learning consultant and the director of LB Learning Solutions. Am I the most qualified, most knowledgeable, best model of diversity and inclusion? No, I'm not. But what are you going to get from me today? Hopefully you're going to get an honest, vulnerable and authentic session. As equals and as learning and development professionals, we're going to walk through this together, and we're going to reflect on our experiences to work towards true inclusion. With me today, I have Aaron King. And Aaron, I'd love it if you'd introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. So as Lyndall said, I'm Aaron King, and I've been in the L&D game now as an employee. I haven't made that brave decision to go out on my own, but I've been in L&D for about 10 years now, and this subject is an absolute passion of mine. Professionally and personally, I've done quite a lot of work in both of those areas around inclusion. So I'm very happy that Lyndall has invited me along today. And yeah, ready to kick off.
Fantastic, thank you. And before we do kick off, you might have noticed I've been sending through something in the chat a few times. Hopefully it's come through for you. There's a little self-reflection checklist that we've put together. And if you click on that link and open it up and download it, you'll be able to work through it and actually fill it in if you want to during the session, or just look at it, or maybe even save it for later. It's up to you how you choose to use it. So, value diversity. What does diversity mean anyway? So to put a bit of context around what it is that we're doing, diversity itself, the definition is quite simple. It just means a mix of people. So the reason that I chose to call the session Working Towards True Inclusion is because inclusion is sort of taking it a step further. And I think that's what we want to do. We want to take it a step further so that we can work, function and interact with each other in a really great way. And if we look at the value diversity model that we've got for the capability framework, that's what it's all about. It's about respecting different backgrounds and skills and experiences, and respecting preferences and the needs of learners and stakeholders. So there's our context for the today. But who are we? So if we think about who we are, or everyone in this session today, we're L&D professionals and we're leaders whether we like it or not. So we observe and we interpret the world around us, we design solutions for others, and we teach. So we have a responsibility. And everyone's different attributes, beliefs, their social conditioning, their behaviours and influences, they make us unique. But sometimes who we are and what we do can lead to others feeling culturally or psychologically unsafe. And it's even more likely to happen when we're not curious enough to research our topic and audience properly, and when we're unaware of our many biases. We call them unconscious biases. For instance, have you ever worked in a learning team made up of similar types of people with similar experiences? I'm seeing nodding. I have. And I can tell you, and I bet you felt the same, that there wasn't enough of challenge. You know, you didn't challenge each other enough, because when you think and speak and act similarly, you don't think of those other questions that someone else might be asking you. And when I worked in a team of similar people, it wasn't until we really looked at our evaluation results that we realised we needed to broaden our perspectives and we needed to do better. So how do you actually know when your view is narrow? And how do you know when you need to do better? Sometimes it's obvious, and it's from those experiences that we learn the most. And I'm going to share, be quite vulnerable with you now, some obvious experiences that I've had that have led me to make some changes and broaden my mind a bit. And so I'm going to ask you now if you can locate the reaction section on the bottom of your Zoom. And if you feel like joining in and saying, yeah, I've experienced that too, or yeah, I've done that too, please feel free, or give me a wave if you want to. But I'm going to start off by saying, as a learner, so this is not a very intrusive one, but as a learner, have you ever experienced something that's not authentic? So perhaps you've been in a learning session where the message was lost on you because it wasn't authentic, perhaps it wasn't respectful. And I can think of a great example of this when I was an employee in an organisation that delivered an Indigenous awareness e-learning. It had been researched, designed and presented by non-Indigenous people. There was no consultation or endorsement by Indigenous people. And as it turned out, the language included in it was culturally disrespectful, and a colleague of mine was offended by it. So have you ever experienced anything like that? Anything not authentic? I know I have. What else is there that we could have experienced that's led us to make some decisions about what we do in the future? Have you ever delivered something that you didn't research properly, or that you had no personal investment in? Something that fell flat because you didn't cater to your people. So I can think of an example of that when I was very new to an organisation and I was asked to deliver a session on communicating with clients. I really had little understanding who the workers were or the clients, and minimal insights into the nature and complexity of their work. And I can tell you that it didn't go down very well. So has that ever happened to you? And what did it teach you? So I'm going to be a little bit more vulnerable now and say, have you ever done anything that's offensive or said anything that's offensive? And certainly I've done that. And usually it's immediately after I've said or done it that I go, oh my goodness, no. And an example of that was one time when I was delivering accredited training in an organisation, and we were discussing reasonable adjustment. And for some reason, the words came out of my mouth when I referred to the people who were doing reasonable adjustment to call them the disabled ones. Terribly offensive and something that I regret, but it certainly made me think twice about what I was saying and what I was doing in the future. And the last one is, have you ever prevented participation? So thumbs up if you've done this. Have you ever organised an event whether it's prevented from people from attending or learning for reasons related to a protected attribute or something else? Maybe it was a date and a time of a religious or culturally significant event, or a personal or family commitment clashed with it, or there were accessibility limitations. And again, big confession here, but as a disability organisation employee, I organised an induction for people to their very first day, and it was under a lot of pressure and not much time. And as it turned out, we only had a venue to choose from that was upstairs or one that was totally out of town. So we chose the upstairs venue after looking through all of the learner declarations just to make sure there wasn't anyone who declared a disability amongst them. But as it turns out, 2 people turned up to the event that had mobility issues, and of course they've been correctly informed that it was their right for non-disclosure, and it was a dreadful thing to have happen where we hope to deliver an induction training and instead we're a disability organisation with egg on our face.
I'll just jump in there, Lyndall. Martin's put a great comment in the chat, and I might ask him a question about it. So Martin said, in a recent meeting about youth, there were no people under 50 years of age. So I suggested to postpone that meeting. So Martin, why was it important that youth be present at that meeting?
Thanks, Aaron, for that question. I think if we talk about people, that particular cohort needs to be there. It was actually in hospitality and the lack of attracting new apprentices in commercial cookery area, particularly. And the whole brainstorming session was all about how do we attract young people into the industry. And again, and I think we need to have those insights. Everything else would be simply assumptions, bias, as Lyndall said beautifully before. And I think that can go awfully wrong. So people do need to be present to make decisions and be involved in the process. I believe it creates a lot of accountability down the track as well.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. So it's not just having a couple of young people in the meeting, but they essentially should be driving the strategies to attract youth. Otherwise, it's an outside perspective looking in, as you say, based on assumptions, which wouldn't hit the mark. That'd be guesswork, which in turn would be costs for no benefit, etc. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Erin. I'm going to keep moving now and say that all of the things that, you know, I've just confessed about, but all those things that happen can lead us to make some good decisions for the future. So we can, based on our own learnings and our experiences, or perhaps mistakes we make or the things that we encounter, we can develop our own strengths and capabilities in different areas. And we've done that. And so what we're going to do now is take a moment to reflect on the things that we're pretty good at. And if you haven't already downloaded the self-reflection checklist, please feel free to do that. I'll put it back in the chat box so you can download it, or if you want to refer to it, or even if you want to download it and draw on it, feel free. Or if you just want to look along, that's cool too. So what we're going to do is have a look at our strengths and capabilities. Take a moment to look at topic 1, and you'll notice here that there's quite a few things here. And what I'd ask you to do is consider the things that you do well and the things that you do often, and just use this as a bit of an opportunity to go, yeah, actually, I really do these things. Obviously, we've got blind spots and we can never be perfect, and that's okay. But if we can remember to hold ourselves to account on a fairly regular basis, we've got a greater chance of moving in the right direction towards true inclusion.
This is a brilliant list, Lyndall, with a lot of things to be looked at and considered. Well done.
Thanks, I made it up myself. I'm not going to spend ages on this, so if you're still doing it, feel free, keep going. But I want to make sure that we finish the session on time, in fairness to everyone today, so we'll just keep going. And thinking now that we've got these strengths and capabilities, we've got these things that we're pretty good at. But the truth is, the first time we meet someone different to us in any way, or we're faced with an environment that's out of our comfort zone, we have immediate responses. And sometimes those responses come in the form of fear or judgment, and we often jump to conclusions. And it's natural, it's a natural human response. It helps protect us from danger, or it did once. But let's be honest here, sometimes that fear is about not wanting to be embarrassed. And sometimes it comes from a place of not wanting to feel uncomfortable. And so that leads me to the next question on that list, which is, can you think of a time when you're faced with a new situation or met someone different that made you fearful of saying the wrong thing? And so we're up to topic 2 now, which is fear. So a situation, I'm going to give you an example of where I was afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. And this has led me on a journey in my professional life that I had not expected. But it was the very first time that I met a client who was blind. And I was quite afraid. I didn't know how to interact with her, and I didn't know what I was going to say. And when it comes to, you know, what I was most afraid of, my goodness, it was just about everything. I thought I might get in her way. I thought I might get in her assistance dog's way. I didn't know where to look. I thought, what if I say, look at this? And she couldn't look at it. And I thought maybe I might forget that she couldn't see what I was looking at in our interactions with her as well. So I'm sure you've got an example of something that you were afraid of, maybe saying or doing the wrong thing, and what it was. And perhaps you made some assumptions just like I did. So the assumptions that I made was that if I said, look at this, that she might be offended, because it turned out she wasn't. I also realised that I'd assumed that if I was using alt text in any digital work that I did, that I needed to avoid describing colour. And it turns out for her, no, it was just the opposite, because she used to have sight and she wanted that to be able to draw a mental picture for her. And the other thing that I assumed is that everybody who's blind is 100% vision impaired, and that's not necessarily true either, because in her circumstance, she can make out some sort of light and shade, and there's some shapes and some sort of swirls that she occasionally can see. She still needs an assistance dog, and she can't get by without some assistance to get around, but there is some vision that she has. So being clinically blind doesn't necessarily mean you can't see anything.
I'll just jump in here on this fear thing, because for me, fear is a huge driver of my behaviour. And when I was preparing this session with Lyndall and for Lyndall, I was thinking about not only fear coming from a professional area, but also personally. So a situation where I was afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing was when I went to dinner with my friend's parents, who are quite well-to-do. And I was most afraid of being judged, that they would be able to tell that I had quite humble beginnings. And the assumption that I made was that they were better people than me because they had money. And as Lyndall said, we all are constantly making judgments. That is a natural thing back from fight or flight. And the hot water here and the dangerous territory is when the assumptions that we make based around our fears impact how we communicate with people. Assumptions are very, very dangerous, because even if you are from the same kind of cohort of people, for instance, I'm queer, not all queer people are the same. So I can't even make an assumption about my best friend who is also queer. Assumptions are a real dangerous territory with this stuff. And like Lyndall said, sometimes we're not aware of the assumptions we make, but doing activities like this help us to see, okay, so that's something that I could be mindful of. Yep.
Thank you. So let's look at how we can identify some gaps here and think about the language and our behaviours and what might be empowering versus what might be disempowering. So, for instance, if we take the time to find out how people prefer to be referred to and spoken about, we can make the transition from disempowering to empowering them, as Erin said. And if we go to the next topic on that checklist, I'm asking you to have a think about what language or behaviour could be considered disempowering. And without context, this is probably a bit hard to do. So let's give you a point of reference. Let's take a minute to think about how someone from a marginalised group would like to be introduced to your team at work, and what language and behaviour might be disempowering in that situation for them. And once you've had a think about that, and feel free to write it if you want to, or just have a think, but then let's twist it and let's say what might be empowering.
I assume, Lyndall, at this stage, we don't take our lessons from The Office.
No, no, we wouldn't. But I will take my lessons from my great friend Di, who I mentioned earlier, my blind friend, who is, she is somebody who I now work with very closely, and we work on digital accessibility together. And we've done a lot of work together. And over the time, we've had some great deep conversations about empowering versus disempowering and the way people interact and assume. And some of the things that are said to her are things that people wouldn't intend to be disempowering, but sometimes they are. So one thing that, you know, somebody might be introducing her for the first time and they'll say Diane is disabled. That in itself is not very kind. To say, if you need to say that she has a disability, you can say Diane has a disability, but to say she's disabled sort of implies that she can't do stuff. Also saying that she suffers from a vision impairment. I know Di really well. She's not suffering. She's not suffering from anything. So saying Diane is vision impaired is much kinder. Also saying she's blind, straight up, you know, the first time you meet somebody, do they actually really need to know that first? And is that really helpful? If I'm introducing Di in a work context and she's doing work for us around screen reader testing, I'll say this is Dr. Diane Ashworth. She's a JAWS screen reader user instead of saying she's blind. And some things that she says that happen quite often to her are when she's walking along and somebody's giving her directions, that sometimes people assume it's okay to pull her along. And that can be really disconcerting for somebody who can't see. So it's always good to ask her, and in her instance, she prefers if you walk alongside and she takes your elbow. And also the other thing that people assume about her, and even in her work, and she works at the NDIS now, but some people assume that if her dog's there, it's open season for patting. But if you know anyone who's vision impaired, you'll know that their dog's working when they're with them. So it's not okay to just go and pat their dog. So all of these things are important. We need to ask and make sure. Which leads me to this thing about being an individual. And Erin alluded to this before when she was saying if somebody's queer and someone's friend's queer, it doesn't mean that they prefer to be treated the same way. So it's always important to ask an individual how they want to be referred to and supported and treated and included, and then do it. And that's empowering for everyone, no matter who we are. There's a great interview that I heard recently with an AFLW player, and she's from a Sudanese background. And she said, every time somebody meets me for the first time, they always say, "Where are you from?" And she said, wouldn't it be wonderful if they just said, "What team do you barrack for?" So I thought that was really quite nice. So we're up to topic 5 now, as everyone is an individual, and it's a time to reflect on what the difference is between the individual versus the attribute. And there are some things about protected attributes that might be a great idea to include for everybody, but it's really important to always remember that we're dealing with individuals. So how do we achieve this as L&D professionals? What does walking in someone else's shoes really feel like? I mean, how do we know that? So as L&D professionals, we want to spend time finding out about topics we're designing learning for from different perspectives. It's an investment. It's an investment in the quality of our work and the respect we earn from doing it. And when I work with anyone, learners, team members, clients, marginalised groups or minorities, these questions that I'm showing you up on the screen can apply in any one of those situations. And they're great questions I like to ask myself to elicit more information, to find out what it is that I can do to cater for people better. And that leads me to the last little bit, which is we've sort of looked at, you know, some things that are our weaknesses. We've looked at our strengths. We've looked at what can be disempowering and empowering and what it means to treat people as individuals. But what can we do to bring ourselves closer to true inclusion? We can't be perfect, but we can make an effort. And something that I've been doing since the start of this year, after I went to a great leadership seminar conducted by Cameron Schwab, was that I'm a real list person. I'm an organizer, and I like writing lists for myself to do for the day, you know, do this, write this email, send this message off and things like that. And he said, as a leader, he was always so busy, and it was very difficult for him to be in the moment and to think about what he really needed to do and what was really important. So he started, instead of having a to-do list at the beginning of every day, although he probably still had a to-do list because I know I still have one, but instead of having that as the first thing of the day, the first thing that he would do before he switched on his computer or he'd do any actions, make any phone calls, is to think about what he wanted to be. So instead of what he wanted to do, it's what he wanted to be. And so he writes himself a to-be list. And I started doing that at the beginning of this year and couldn't believe how much better my day panned out. You know, I want to be kind today. I want to be a good listener today. I want to be flexible and adaptable. And once I put those things in my mind and made a commitment to do those things, the whole day just flowed beautifully. And all those things on my to-do list had those things in mind, as front of mind. So what is it that you want to do? It might be a to-be list or it might be something else, but what is it that you want to do to bring yourself closer to true inclusion? Are there things that sort of you've thought about that, you know, maybe I could know more about this? Are there things that you think I could do these things better? Are there moments where you've made a faux pas, like I did at the, in some of those things I confessed at the beginning? You think, gee, I know I need to make a change so that that doesn't happen again. So have a think about what it is that you might like to do. And we'll move on to a self-rating now. So for the capability framework, the L&D capability framework that value diversity comes from, each of the attributes is rated according to foundation, capable, experienced, and expert. And under that, it'd be really good to consider where you are with value diversity now. So this is a self-rating. This is not an ILP rating. It's just us looking at ourselves and saying, where are we at? The information in grey we saw at the beginning. So these are the overview about respecting people and respecting preferences and needs. And the things in white are a bit extra than what we saw before. So take a moment, have a look at this and say, where am I? Am I foundation? Am I capable? Am I experienced? Or am I an expert? And wherever you are, figure out what you're going to do. So if you're at a high standard already, maybe you want to look at something you can do to maintain that existing standard. Or maybe if you're thinking like, gee, I've got a lot of work to do in this space, maybe there's a few goals and actions that you could consider to do to take some steps to learning some more. And I know when it comes to where I sit in terms of inclusion, I've spent a lot of time improving my knowledge and learning about how to work with people with mixed abilities and disabilities. And it's something that I'll continue to do because it's a passion of mine. But there are other attributes and other minorities that I have no experience of. And if I'm going to be working in any of those areas, I certainly want to find more out about those. And I probably just want to do that anyway, because I'm an L&D person and I'm curious, which I guess you are too. So that's the end of the main part of the presentation there. Oh, and did you make a personal commitment? Does anyone want to share any comments, or Erin, is there anything in the chat that you think we could leverage off?
We've got a couple of people who love the to-be list with Cameron. And we've got some really good perspectives. Disability is only an issue if we let it be. Focus on what we can do, so people's strengths instead of what we can't. Seek first to understand before passing judgment. I reflect on this every day from Con. And Martin's got a good one. We know so much that isn't so.
Mm.
So that's basically just me reading everything that was in the chat. But if any,
one of the things, Lyndall, that I was looking at, and I love the way you put the framework up there, and the where you're a foundation through to expert and all that. I always struggle when I come to that question about value and diversity, because I have I've worked with people in a dozen different countries, so that aspect of things. I've worked with Aboriginal groups. I facilitated with Joy FM and helping them through some processes. And yet every time I come back to it, I say, there's still people I haven't met and I haven't worked with and I haven't been able to relate to in my way. So I always feel inadequate in the ability to really say, yeah, I don't know that I'd ever be expert, and certainly I don't know whether ever even I have experience, but at what stage? It must be very difficult to know, because we work with so many different people, thinking styles, levels of styles, race, views. It'd be amazing to see what some of our L&D colleagues are doing now in the United States if they happen to have a mixture of Democrats and Republicans in the group. The diversity of politics, the diversity of so many things. It's almost like an unachievable goal. And I think that the guidance that we could do on this is almost never ending.
Yeah, and I think that when at the beginning you said, we were talking about my delivering this session. I thought, oh my God, I'm not an expert on this. And I thought, hang on a minute, who is? Because you could study diversity and inclusion for a lifetime, but still make mistakes. And it's a really tricky one.
I'll jump in there. Bill, you are spot on, because diversity and inclusion are two words that essentially capture every individual on the planet, because you can belong to a particular cohort of people or whatever, but every individual within that cohort is an individual, which is why asking people is important. So you've worked with different cohorts of people and you've learnt from those experiences, but it doesn't mean the next time you go and work for Joy FM or in an Aboriginal community that it will be the same experience.
Exactly.
So, I feel like I'm an expert at being queer for me, but I don't know what it's like to be a trans man or a trans woman or a person of color who's a lesbian. Like, I have absolutely no idea, and I'm from that community. So you are intelligent and correct to say that it's hard to tick yourself off as an expert in this, because you know the experience of being Bill.
Yeah.
That's what you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I know when we were working with Joy FM. The group of people that I had in the room, every one of them was completely different from each other.
Yes.
So many, and it was a stark reality. One of the joys I took out of that was, it was one of these meetings where they used to say, we go into these things every year, and we usually come out more disagreeable with each other than we've ever done before. At the end of this session, they all went out for lunch together for the very first time, because what I was trying to do is guide them through a strategy that they understood that if they didn't work together on it, they weren't going to survive. And it was a joy, but that embracement is a real challenge. And I just think it's such a wonderful area. I got an email from another one of our colleagues today, Gail, who was suggesting that she'd love to run something on diversity. It's not a masterclass, it's like a 3-day conference to get started.
And you still wouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So the beautiful thing about how Lyndall's designed this is its personal reflections, because as L&D professionals, we're often one person at the center of a room or Zoom room or whatever, talking to 20 or 30 different individuals. And so having these things designed in a way that is a reflective activity is intelligent, because there's no one size fits all. There's no tick the box for diversity and inclusion. There's no, all right, yep, I've learnt that I have to allow 30 more minutes for Aboriginal people for yarning circles. It's like, yes, as Lyndall said, there may be similarities in particular groups, but also assuming that is also dangerous. So the best way to explore this stuff is through personal reflection, because the way we view the world is how we are in the world.
Yes, and it's kind of like designing and facilitating in, say, a Muslim country where prayers are 5 times a day and the different timings. I mean, there's some things right there, So.
Exactly.
But I'm sure many other people have input on this, and I'd love to hear some other thoughts and what other people have experienced.
Well, if I can just bounce off something Erin said before, none of us are just one thing, and that is the complexity. You say I'm a queer, but queer female, queer left-handed person, queer Richmond supporter. I mean, there's so much. There's diversity within diversity within diversity. There's 7 billion different individuals on the planet. It's very.
And we are all unique snowflakes.
Some of us prefer not to be called snowflakes.
Not the same every day either.
Lyndall, as you know, Lyndall, disability is very personal to me. Very, very personal. And the biggest frustration over disability is that the lack of awareness in the community. It's very frustrating when you have an autistic child, then people look at you and say you're a bad parent. Very, very disappointing. Lots of nights crying, lots of nights looking, searching, and trying to understand society. And it reminds me of the case recently where a youth went into a pub to ask for a beer. None of you guys saw the news article, and he was told to leave because he was drunk.
Yeah.
He said, I haven't had a beer. And he said, no, you're drunk. You got to leave. And he was escorted outside by security. And because he was autistic and managed to speak in a different manner. So what I'm raising here is the concern that I don't think, and I'll be general here, I don't think we do enough about awareness. My son went to a streamlined school and didn't speak for a while. Then we realised we put The Simpsons on, and after about 2 years, he was speaking fluent English. By watching The Simpsons 24/7 non-stop. In fact, even to today, born and raised in Australia, speaks with an American accent. So people will say to us, how long have you lived in America? I said, never. My son speaks with a very distinctive American accent.
And does he say go? Go?
And I'll tell you, there's some great stories I can tell you about the stuff he learned and picked up from. But he's also a visual learner. So he went to a streamlined school. And I'll finish off with one last story. It's about how, and I'll say, people that are disabled or got a bit of disability, they've got a lot of awareness. So he went to a streamlined school for a number of years. And we eventually took him to, after a number of years, took him to a disabled school, or an autism school. And we went around for a tour. And we came back and we were sitting down talking to him. And I said, what do you think, John? What do you think about this new environment? He said, Dad, you know what? I finally found my people.
Yeah.
It was an amazing revelation. I just sat there stunned. And I even say that now and I'll get a shiver up my spine. I finally found my people. We don't realise how much awareness there is out there with these individuals, and they themselves know what they want. They know what they like. They know how they learn. And I think we just need to build awareness, and that's my story.
Yeah, and we've talked so much about what it is to be unique, but we also all need to belong. So we need to belong in our own unique way. I just want to share one other thing with you. I'm sending you a link in chat at the moment. And I thought, when I do sessions like these or conferences, I always love it when people share things that they've used or they find valuable. So I'm sending you a list of diversity and inclusion references that I have personally used in the last 12 months. Whether they're the best ones or not, they're not potentially, because there's a whole world out there, but they're ones that I've personally used and I thought they were great. So feel free to, grab that list. And if you have your own, I would love it if you'd share them. I'd love it if you'd share it, and I'll add more to the list and ask if Bill could circulate it again, because, we've got one already from Martin. Please put it in the chat, Martin. We can learn so much from each other and pick up some great resources that way. And I love to share. So if you're not already connected with me on LinkedIn, please also do that.
And when you go to that Google Docs there, just you can go to File and download to Word, and then you've captured it for yourself.
Great.
We still have 5 minutes or so if anybody has anything that they want to add in. I think this is a topic that I think we could just keep discussing. And it's a case of where does it end? And I was in a session the other day with Lyndall, and Erin was in the background there, and I said, you got to bring Erin in on this because she has a wonderful perspective. Sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
I was going to ask, I just had a quick scan of, and thank you, Lyndall, that was really great. And also Prezi. So the topic came up today with a group, and where I had to introduce people first language. And then one of the people in the group was asking about some kind of course that they could do. So I was just wondering if on that list, if I'll be able to find anything there. And it was interesting as well because someone, the topic of, digital skills for accessibility came up, and this person who wants to be a support worker in primary school said, no, you can't have a person with high needs using technology.
Oh,
And was really, really, and I just said, well, I'm going to be talking to someone today who knows all about that.
yeah.
But she was very much, so I'm not quite sure where she was coming from. So what was going on in, so I was assuming, sorry, yes, we shouldn't make assumptions, but I just didn't want to get into it too much. But so anyway, so the outcome of that was we were wondering about, so courses on sort of, I guess, inclusion and also for digital accessibility as well.
I haven't got anything on my list, confession now, I haven't got anything on my list about Indigenous training or anything like that, but if anyone has anything great, please share it with Rachel. But when it does come to digital accessibility, that's something that I've been burying myself in for the last few years. And one of the things that I've been working on particularly is making sure that e-learning is accessible, because quite often people who use assistive technology find that they're blocked out of e-learning, but also even simple things like using a Word document or a PDF. And unfortunately, the PDF that I was going to share with you today failed at the 11th hour with technology, but it was an accessible, fillable PDF. So it has all the tooltips and everything in it like that. And if you're interested in learning more about digital accessibility, if you can wait for it, I'm doing a Geelong Design Week event in March next year. It's a free event on the 23rd of March on online accessibility. So making things accessible for users. And if you connect with me on LinkedIn, we'll find out more about that when we're able to release it, because I can't release any details until Geelong Design Week is launched.
We can cheat a little bit though, Lyndall, because we did get your recording from last year's.
You did, yes. So I did one on documents last year, and it is available on the ILP resources to view, and that's about how to make digital documents accessible.
We put up under the Tools to Survive and Thrive page. I recommend everybody go and have a look at it.
Yeah, and the one that I'm delivering in March will have more of a focus about online, but again, looking at that accessibility and how we can do it better so that we don't shut people out. But if you want, something else that I do as part of my business is I actually go into organisations and upskill people so that they can do it for themselves. So have a chat if you'd like to.
Thank you. Can I just ask, ILP resource page?
If you go to our website, apilp.org, under resources, if you slide down to the bottom, there's Tools to Survive and Thrive. There's a range of things in there. We put that page up at when we all went into lockdown, because we knew that people would need a range of things. There are also a bunch of resources that are L&D resources. Much of it is available to anyone. Another bit of it is available only to members who need to be logged in to access it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? There's a big thank you. Well, big round of applause, please. Lyndall, thank you very much for that. That was exactly what I was hoping for.
Great.
I'm glad that you embraced the challenge. And what we'll talk about next is how we put not just a masterclass together, but something really significant to help advance this whole area in the coming year. And lovely to have you involved, Erin. Thank you very much for your contributions. It was really meaningful for us. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Erin, for taking time out of your working day to do this.
That's all right. I'll head back to my emails. Thanks.